All right, today we're jumping into one of literature's all-time great debates. This thing was staged basically by the brilliant John Dryden. We're talking about his essay of dramatic poesy, which was pretty much a 17th century showdown for the very soul of theater. So let's get right into it, because at the heart of this whole essay is a question that's just timeless. I mean, every single creator faces it, right? Do you follow the proven rules of the past, or do you just break free and try to forge your own path? That's the huge conflict we're going to dig into. Okay, to really get this debate, you got to travel back with me to Restoration England. We're talking about a time when, after years of total chaos, the monarchy was finally back. And with it, a flood of new cultural influences, especially coming from France. And, well, this basically set the stage for a massive artistic clash. So, if you were an English writer back then, you had this really critical choice to make. Do you build your literature on the classical rules, the ones from ancient Greece and Rome? Or did your own homegrown tradition have a special kind of power that deserved to be celebrated all on its own? First up, let's look at the argument for sticking with tradition. This side of the ring was really championed by the French. At the time, they were seen as the absolute masters of taking that classical style, refining it, and just perfecting it for the modern stage. So yeah, in one corner of this literary smackdown, you've got the French playwrights. And for them, great art was all about structure. It was about discipline, order, a real sense of decorum. They truly believed that creativity worked best when it had a clear set of rules to follow. And the biggest, most important of these rules, that would be the famous 3 unities. Think of this as the blueprint, the golden rules that any respectable play was just expected to follow. And this whole idea was inherited directly from the ancients. Now, this classical rulebook, it was incredibly restrictive. I mean, just imagine this. You have to have a single plot line. It has to take place in a single location, and the whole story has to unfold in just 24 hours. On top of all that, you could absolutely never mix tragedy and comedy. The whole goal was to keep everything neat, orderly, and perfectly controlled. But just across the channel, the English writers had a totally different idea. They were looking at their own dramatic history. I mean, come on, think Shakespeare. And they saw this powerful, kind of sprawling energy that just would not fit inside that neat little classical box. So their rebuttal? It was basically a defense of pure creative freedom. Yeah, the English response was pretty much this. Look, your rules are fine and all, but our plays have life. They've got energy. They totally championed the sprawling, imaginative, and, yeah, sometimes messy nature of their drama as a huge strength, not some kind of weakness. I mean, you just couldn't get 2 more different philosophies. You had the French model, all about rules and discipline, and then you had the English model, celebrating imagination and freedom. It was a classic showdown, right? Order and decorum versus vitality and energy. Genre purity versus mixing it all up. And Dryden, speaking through one of his characters, he just nails it. He basically argues that the English tradition justifies all its rule-breaking through sheer imaginative force. So what if it doesn't have that French neatness? He says it more than makes up for it with raw, creative energy. Okay, so you've got these 2 powerful arguments clashing. Where does John Dryden himself actually land on this? Well, here's the thing. He doesn't just pick a side. Nope. Instead, he kind of acts like a thoughtful judge, carefully weighing the good points of both before he delivers his final verdict. What's so clever is how Dryden stages this whole debate. He does it between 4 characters in his essay, and he uses one character in particular, Eugenius, which means well-born or of good genius, to argue the case for the modern English playwrights. And ultimately, that's how he presents his own really sophisticated take on it all. You can really see Dryden build his case in 3 clear steps. First, he gives a nod to the ancients. He totally respects that they built the very foundations of drama. But then, he critiques the French for following those rules just a little too strictly. He argues their quote-unquote perfect plays often felt, kind of cold and lifeless. And that leads him right to his final point, championing the English, celebrating that unique, imaginative genius they had. So in the end, Dryden's verdict is, well, it's a powerful defense of his home team. He basically concludes that, yeah, classical rules are valuable, they have their place, but the sheer, lively, imaginative spirit of the English tradition, the one personified by guys like Shakespeare, is just flat out superior. So you might be wondering, why are we still talking about some essay from the 17th century? Well, it's because this was never just about plays. It was about a really fundamental question of creativity, a question that, let's be honest, we are still grappling with today. What makes Dryden's essay so important is that it's one of the first and one of the most eloquent arguments for artistic innovation. He wasn't saying, hey, just ignore the past. Not at all. But he was boldly stating that every generation has the right to evolve, to create something new. And by doing that, he powerfully justified the value of England's own homegrown tradition. And that really leaves us with this final thought to chew on. In any creative field you can think of, music, movies, tech, whatever, which path leads to greater art? Is it better to carefully perfect a formula that already exists, or to take that bold, risky step and just break it entirely? Dryden made it his choice for sure. But this debate, it is far from over.